we're going to go ahead and focus on our new unit, our new chapter, decimals. We're going to cover sections 1, 2, and 3 in this video. Now, we've already covered what the standard form, word form, expanded, and expanded form with exponents is. But now we're going to focus on how zeros can be written in after the last digit of a decimal and how these do not change the value of the decimal. So if we have a zero after a 0.01, such as 0.010, that's still the same number. Let's look at an example. Here we have 23.107, 23.017, 23.1070, and 23.0107. What we want to do is find which of the following are equivalent decimals. Now, equivalent decimals are decimals with basically the same number. Okay, so they name the same number. So it's the same thing. So if I ask you for an equivalent decimal, it's basically the same number, but I may have an added zero at the end of it. Okay, so 23.017, is that the same thing as the second number, 23.017? No. Okay, because we know 23.1 is greater than 23.0. Let's look at the third number, 23.107, 0. There I've added a 0 at the end, and that is the same number as the first number. We have a 23, okay, 107. But I add a 0 at the end, okay, to where it looks like 1070, but it is not anything new. It is the same number as the first number. Now, if I look at the last number, this number is different than the first number, the second number, and the third number. So only the second and the third are the same. Only the second and the third are the equivalent decimals. So you're looking for the same number, but it just has an added 0 at the end. And when we say that, if we add a 0 to the end of something, that is called annexing or adding in a 0. So let's compare and round decimals. The law of trichotomy, remember tri meaning 3, states that every real number is either positive, negative, or 0. Here we have 3 sections. Okay, we're referring to the 3 parts. We're going to focus more on 3 possibility relations, okay, between any 2 numbers. This refers to the greater than, equal, and less than symbols, which we've already covered and learned about in the past. We're going to compare decimals, and there are rules in comparing decimals. First, we're going to start on our left. We're going to compare the digits that share the same place value. So we're going to focus on the decimal point and focus on the left to see which one's bigger, which one's smaller. Then we're going to identify the first place value where the digits are different. So we're going to find the first place value. Where is the place that the digits change? Where are they different? Then third, we're going to compare the decimals. We're going to compare the decimals in the same order that these digits compare. Now, if the numbers of place values are different, then we're going to add in some zeros to make the numbers the same before comparing. So here are some examples. So let's apply those 3 steps. Let's make it more applicable to understand. Here we have 7.423, and we have 7.4235. Now that last little point is just a period, so let's ignore that. But we have 7.423 and 7.4235. Now we're looking at these numbers. We look at the left. To the left of the decimal, it's the same. Then we look to the right of the decimal. 4 and 4, the same. 2 and 2, the same. 3 and 3, the same. But where is it different? That second number has a 5. It has an extra number. So you know what we can do? To compare it, we're going to annex. We're going to add in a 0 to the first number. 7.423, we're going to add in a 0. Now they are the same amount of places. Okay, we have a total of 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits in the second number. So now let's compare them. Which one is greater? Which one's perhaps smaller or equal? So if we compare the 0 and the 5, we know 0 is less than 5. Okay, 0 is less than 5 because those are the only two numbers that are different. All the rest of the numbers are equal, are the same. So we're just going to keep going until we find the number that's different. And what we had to do here was previously we had to annex or add in a 0 to compare those numbers. Okay, so 7.23 will be less than 7.4235. Now let's compare again using the greater than, less than, equal signs. Okay, 0.6734 compared to 0.6743. So what numbers are we going to compare? We're going to look at 0.673. We're going to focus on that 3 and compare it to the right number, which is 0.674. 4 is larger. So our left number, 0.6734, is smaller, is less than our right number because 3 is smaller than 4. Let's look at another one. 17.48 compared to 7.480. Okay, well, the second number has an extra digit. So let's annex or add in a 0 to the first number, and that gives us 17.480, which is the same number. So those would be equal to. Okay, let's look at 5.34. 5.34 compared to 5.259. Now 5.259 has more digits, but does that mean it's bigger? Okay, no, not necessarily. Let's look at the first two numbers. We have 5 and 5. Now we have the decimal. Oh, on the left number we have 5.3, and that's larger than 5.2. Okay, we're not doing any rounding or anything. We're just comparing those numbers. So the 5.3 is larger than the 5.2. So the left number is greater than the 5.259. Okay, now the fourth one, we have 0.801, and we're going to compare that to 0.81. So we're going to focus on, starting on the left, 0 and 0 is the same. We have the decimal, 8 and 8 are the same, but then we have 0 compared to 1. The 0 is less than the 1, so the left number, 0.801, is less than 0.81. If you have any questions on those, on the comparing, please reach out and ask me. Okay, so when we order decimals, we're going to annex or add in those zeros, which we just talked about, so that all the numbers have the same number or the same number of digits of decimal places. Then we're going to compare to find the least and greatest decimals. I want you to use this chart to help you. First, underline the digit in the rounding place. Then circle the digit to the right of the rounding place. So if we are going to be rounding, that underline and circling will help you. Do you have to do that? No, we already talked about, many of you said you don't want to use that or you don't need to use that. That's fine, but this helps and guides you so you don't make a simple mistake. Now, we move on to the diamond. Is the circled digit 5 or more? If it is yes, Okay, I'm going to add 1. I'm going to round it up. If it's no, I leave the underlined digit unchanged. Then, here we go, I'm going to drop all digits to the right of the rounding place. Okay, so I'm rounding. So I'm going to ignore those. I'm going to drop all those digits. Okay, here's a basic chart showing you near the ones place, tenths place, nearest hundredth, and nearest thousandth. So if the decimal is 3.528, if I round, 3.5, round it up to a 4, nearest tenth. Okay, the 2 is not larger than 5, so it stays at 3.5. Nearest hundredth, that's at the 2 place. So 8 is greater than 5, so that rounds up the 2 to a 3. And then nearest thousandth, that's going to round. It's not going to round up, so the 4 does not round up, so it stays as an 8, 3.528. Okay, let's look at some examples. Round 0.8649 to the nearest hundredth. So the ones place is the 0, then we have the decimal. The tenth place is the 8. The hundredth is the 6. So let's look at to the right of it, the 4. Okay, that's not greater than 5, so it stays 0.86. Remember, I drop off those numbers to the right of that number. We don't focus on the 4, we don't focus on the 9 anymore. It's just 0.86. Let's round 6.2395 to the nearest thousandth. So 6 is the ones place, 2 is the tenth, 3 is the hundredth, 9 is the thousandth. So I'm going to look at the 5. I'm going to underline the 9 and look at the 5. It's 5 and above. So that will then round up. That will impact the 9. This gets a little tricky. That will then impact the 9, okay, making it a 10. And then that 1 of the 10, that 1, okay, gets brought up over the 3, and that makes it a 4. So 6.24 or 6.240. Now let's talk about adding and subtracting decimals. What we want to do is we want to line up the decimal place. So we want to make it in columns. And let's take a look at that. First, you align putting it in the proper column. So we put the 2 decimal points on top of each other so that the tenths place will be added to the tenths place and the hundredth to the hundredth. So really this is just saying if it's 0.1 and we have 1.0, we line up the 2 decimal places above each other. Then we add, it would be 1.1. Number 2, add the decimals as you would add whole numbers, keeping the decimal point in the same location. So let's look at an example. 25.08, 6.523, and 239.4. These are all different size numbers, and you can see there are more numbers to the right of the decimal point for the 6.523 and more numbers or digits to the left for the 239.4. So we're not going to actually line them up by how many digits they have, but we're going to line them up and match up the decimal points. So let's look at a picture here. I am now lining up the decimal points, but then I'm going to add in or annex these zeros. So the 25.08, I need to add in a 0 because 6.523 has 3 places to the right of the decimal point. And then I'm going to add in 2 zeros for the 239.4 because of the 6.523. So once I line the decimal points all up, and I add in the zeros, I can go ahead and add. Okay. Here are 3 examples. I'd like you to go ahead and try them without looking at any answers. Annex in the zeros. So go ahead, pause this, and then show your work. And then go ahead and unpause it, and you can check your answers. Okay, here are the answers. And you can see for number 1, we did add in or annex a 0. Okay, so check your work. Now we're going to focus on subtracting. In the same way, we're going to do the same thing as adding. We're going to align the decimal points, add in or annex any zeros. We're then going to subtract, just like we're subtracting whole numbers. And we're going to place the decimal point in the difference as well. But then we need to also check our work of subtraction by adding. Okay, so we're going to add your final answer with the smaller number that we took away from the whole. Okay, so here's an example, 32 minus 16.485. We need to put in the decimal points. Now, because it's just 32, we know it's 32.0, and then we have to add in or annex some zeros, so it ends up being 32.000, okay, to match up and line up with the number I'm subtracting. And that gives us our total, our difference. Now, let's do it again. So go ahead and practice these, try these, check to see that you did it correctly. Please do the practice work and check your answers. The more practice you can do, the better will be for you.